Hey, welcome to Mind Your Own Biz, the podcast where we help small business owners with big dreams build something authentically you. I'm Alicia Yervis, educator, marketer, designer, nacho enthusiast, and your big sister in business. I'm excited for us to have this cozy spot to chat. Each episode, we'll tackle candid conversations, actionable tips, and a few fun tangents to help you run your business your way. Because business is always personal, no matter what anyone says. So grab your iced coffee or those nachos and let's get started. Hello there and welcome to another episode of Mind Your Own Biz. My name is Alicia Yervis. I am your host of this podcast and I'm so excited to be about to publish episode 10. It has whooshed by. I've been having a lot of fun making this podcast. If you've been listening from the beginning, you know I've kind of been winging it as I go. But it's been so much fun. I've learned a lot. I am loving these conversations and loving doing the solo episodes too, because I mix those in. But I'm so happy to have found this medium and this way to connect with folks out there, and really get to know more business owners and also bring you more of what you need through tips and strategy and advice on how to grow your business, how to be yourself in business, how to grow your brand awareness, marketing tips, design tips, all that good stuff. And so before we jump into today's episode with my guest, which I'm going to get to in a minute, it's a good one. I want to remind you, I have a brand new freebie for you that can help you as a business owner save so much time and be able to focus more on the things that you love to do and the stuff that you're good at, while getting help on the things that you don't love doing, or maybe that you're not so good at, or you don't have time for. So if you listened to episode 7, you heard from my virtual assistant, Caitlin Serrato, and she and I created a free guide for you. It's called VA 101, and you can get it at aliciayervis.com/VA 101. And it teaches you how to reclaim your time by hiring a virtual assistant. So if you're ready to streamline your business and reclaim that time, this free guide covers everything you need to know about hiring and working with a virtual assistant. From finding the right fit to delegating tasks effectively, there's even a link for where you can find qualified VAs. And so you can go grab that guide at aliciayervis.com/VA 101. And that'll help you a lot. And then, of course, listen to episode 7, where we do a deep dive on what made me decide to get a virtual assistant, how I knew it was time. And we're also dispelling a bunch of myths there. So check that out. I wanted to make sure to mention that at the top. So in today's episode, I'm very excited because as I'm talking about virtual assistants and reclaiming your time and saving time and getting help and all of that stuff, I think that it's tough when you have a business, particularly an online business, a creative business. It's so easy to get overwhelmed, right? We have clutter on our desks, we have clutter in our minds, but we're also trying to stay creative and stay efficient and stay organized and all of this stuff. And it's a lot of balls in the air. And so I am really excited to speak to another multi-hyphenate lady today, who can help us with that. So today I am welcoming Whitney Walsh. She is the owner of Girl Friday Crafts. She's had her business for a couple years now, and she's been working on growing it. And she makes and sells t-shirts, jewelry, and home decor. She also does custom orders all the time. And in addition to her creative business, where she makes products and gifts and all that stuff, she's also a certified professional organizer. Hello. And she's incorporated that into her business by developing workshops and courses that help creatives and crafters organize their supplies and their physical spaces. And I'm sure that that can also convey or, help us organize our desks, our homes, our cars, our bags, right? Our computer, our phone, all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to chat with her today. She's a Kentucky girl by birth, but she's lived in the Midwest for more than half of her life. Right now, she's in Central Illinois with her husband and her son and her two dogs. And I am so excited to welcome Whitney today. So I am going to let her in right now. And we're going to start this chat about all the fun things. So she's going to help us get our head on straight. Hello, my friend. Welcome, Whitney. I'm so excited to have you here. I just told my audience a little bit about you and your background, and we're going to get into all of that. But I wanted to say thank you so much for being guest number 10 or episode number 10 of my podcast. I'm so excited to have a creative artist who is going to be chatting with us about your products, about tips and strategies, and how to better organize ourselves and our lives and our businesses. So I'm so happy to have you here.
I am super excited to be here. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Awesome. Yay. Okay. So something that comes up a lot on this podcast, and I think it's like when I'm deciding who I want to have on as guests and stuff, is very often I have a lot of Renaissance women on, women who do more than one thing. And I would absolutely say that you are a Renaissance woman as well. And I love that because I always feel that, we are more than one thing. We can bring our whole selves into our business. And I wanted to ask you, like, how did you start the business and which side started first? Was it the, designing products and gifts and decor and stuff like that? Or was it the organizational side? Like, tell us a bit about how it all came to be.
Sure. So it all actually came to be just kind of as a fluke. So I've always been crafty, always been creative, always wanted to start my own business, but years ago it was party planning and wedding planning and all of that, which never came to fruition. But I bought, this is so funny. I bought a silhouette cameo cutting machine
Mm-hmm.
from a woman in our subdivision who was selling hers and all her vinyl for like ridiculously cheap price because I wanted to be able to make embellishments and titles for scrapbook pages.
Okay.
And so I bought that, started playing around with that. And then I was like, I wonder what this is like to make t-shirts. So I started playing around with heat transfer vinyl and got completely obsessed with that. And, I mean, my family and friends love graphic t-shirts, but you could only make so many for them. And I was like, okay, so maybe I'll get a business license and maybe I'll start an Etsy store and maybe I'll sell a few t-shirts. Cool. So August of 2022, Girl Friday Crafts was born for that reason and that reason only. And then I signed up for a like craft business summit, one of those free weekend kind of
Mm-hmm.
deals. Opted into the VIP because I know I wasn't going to be able to watch the whole thing. And as part of that, I had a bonus into what was called the Side Hustle Academy. It was run by a woman named Serena Correa. And 3 months into the Side Hustle Academy, I jumped into her full coaching program. And that just got me on the track of what else could this be?
Hmm.
And because she's very big on multiple streams of revenue. And so, she uses a sock monkey often as an example. And she's like, if you're creative and you make the sock monkey, it's not just the sock monkey. It's the pattern for the sock monkey, and it's the supplies to make the sock monkey, and it's the tutorial on how to make the sock monkey, and it's the membership for people who want different supplies to make sock monkeys that look different, and it's affiliates and like the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that just gets you started thinking. And when I started thinking then about tutorials and evergreen content and that sort of thing, the organization piece came in. I've always been big on physical and organization and physical space and time management in my 9 to 5 world, but it's like buying craft supplies is a hobby as is using them. And so, it's kind of a running joke in the crafting world that we have no place to put all of the craft supplies that we have, or,
Mm-hmm.
no system of organization for them. And so I thought, okay, so this is an opportunity for me to teach people like me what I've learned about how to do this, about how to organize your physical space in such a way that you can actually find what you need. You're not buying duplicates of things because you can't find it. You're getting rid of things that are no longer your style, or that little 2 inch by 2 inch square of fabric that is not going to be useful for anything. You give yourself permission to get rid of that. And then it just sort of grew from there. Just this
Hmm.
desire to see what I could really make of it. What can I really do with this?
I love that. And it's funny that you said, one of the hobbies is buying craft supplies and the other hobby is using them. I'm a member of the first camp.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
growing growing up, my mom and I, we would do crafts together all the time. We still do them once in a while. And so my whole life, I've been, going to Michael's, going to Joanne Fabrics, going to
Yep.
Linens and things, and what was the other one? The Rag Shop and AC Moore, and getting all these different beads and fabric and paint and puff paint and markers and sketchbooks and glue guns and all these things. And you know even though I definitely made plenty of crafts in my life, more than not I saved lots of craft supplies. And then
Yep.
that, as I opened my business and well, really in college, but after college, um started having a desk of my own and an office of my own and stuff like that, and
Yep.
it just became, okay, now I collect office supplies. I have like
Right.
Sharpies of every color, pen of every color, scissors, tacks, things I don't even use, but it's just fun. It's
Yeah, it is. It is. And as crafters, we want all the things, right? So something
right.
new comes out and we're like, oh, I want to try that. And
Hmm.
we buy the stuff and we try it. And even if it doesn't take, we hold on to the supplies or
Hmm.
well, I might need that. Maybe, but if it's been 5 years and you haven't touched it, maybe it's okay to give it to somebody else. Um,
Right, like the 2 inch square, you need that right after you threw it out. But yeah.
right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I love the idea of the sock puppet example that you shared, because it's so true. Like I run into that too. Like as a solopreneur, it's like, okay, I'm gonna make this new guide, and I'm gonna list it in my, on my site. It's a digital download. It's gonna be $12 or $27 or whatever the thing is. And in my mind, it's like one task. And
Hmm.
then it's like, no, it's not. Like 30 things that I have to do that.
Right.
And so I think that that's very helpful to just like acknowledge that, like as we have these ideas, whether it's a tangible thing or a digital thing,
Right.
that, it's more steps than you think. But on the other hand, sometimes that can actually help you, at least in my opinion, be able to move forward on the thing if you break it down into those small tasks, because
Oh
then
yeah.
you're like, okay, wow, like I'm like 90% done to finally being able to sell this thing because I've completed these little itty bitty little cubes of tasks.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the big piece of it. When I've talked to people about organizing their physical space, whether it's craft space or worked with other people on just office, general things like that, it seems so overwhelming at first. And you really have to break it down, whether you break it down by saying, I'm going to take 15 minutes, I'm going to set a timer, I'm tackling this right here. When that timer is up, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever gets done, gets done. Now you make a bigger mess sometimes in that process. And that's one of the things I tell people when I'm doing a course or workshop. Be prepared for that, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you got to make the mess in order to clean it up. Or you
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm going to tackle this bookshelf. And that however long it takes, I've got the time, but I'm going to do the bookshelf. And that's it. I'm not touching anything else. That means my desk is going to be a mess, or the floor might be a mess, or whatever, because I got to take things off the shelf that don't go there. Yeah, but you've tackled that one piece. It's a quick win. It's a measurable thing that you can look at and say, yep, that's done. Sweet. And you get the momentum then to move on because you've gotten success in this one piece.
I love that so much because so I have ADHD, and when I have tried, like in the past, I've used the Pomodoro timer,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to do these small tasks. And let me tell you, if you're listening out there and you have ADHD too, or even if you don't, it's just hard to, you know, it's hard to get off the couch to take action on your life
Yeah.
sometimes. And you're like, okay, wait, let me see what I can do in 15 minutes or 25
Right.
minutes or whatever the thing is. Like, it really makes a difference. It did for me,
Yeah.
because there's an end in sight. That's the one thing. And then you often are surprised by, oh shit, like I got a lot done in 15 minutes.
Yep.
So I really love that that example.
Yeah.
Um, and so, one of the things I also wanted to ask is, because you have multiple passions as a business
Mhm.
owner, you're doing multiple things, and they're both different. Um, how do you kind of juggle that? Like, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced and that you've kind of had to overcome or work on, as you're
Sure.
trying to find that balance between the two different things?
Sure. So add on top of that that I'm still working a 9 to 5 because right now,
Oh my gosh.
my
Okay.
my craft business is not my sole source of income. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a lot of planning. Like I
Mm-hmm.
really have to sit down, look at my calendar, map out several months in a row of what's going to happen when so that I can work backwards. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember who taught me that years ago back in the day, but somebody taught me that in terms of planning that you have to work backwards. So my next workshop is launching March 15th, I think, whatever that Saturday is. You think I'd know this. So that's already on the calendar. Dates on the calendar, times on the calendar. So I know what I have to have done by when. I don't have to have it built before I can start marketing it, but I
Mm-hmm.
have to have it built by the 14th because if I'm teaching it on the 15th, it all has to be done. So I've started working on the slides because I don't want to leave that till the last minute. Take a little bit, take a little bit, take a little bit. That's how I build out content is to
Mm-hmm.
do the slides and then, kind of make my notes. But I know now, like, okay, I gotta do my social media here and I have to develop all my assets for it here and all that kind of stuff because I want 2 week lead time as I'm promoting that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's the same with the craft stuff. So I have a class, I teach in-person classes once a month. And so I have dates for those set for the next several months. So I know, okay, so February class is next week. That's all done. Stuff's bought, promo's done, people are registering. March, I got to start thinking about March because by March 1st, I need to have the project selected. I need to have the sample created so that I can take it up to the store. So Madison can create all the things that she does for me to put on the store's Facebook page. And, we can start driving traffic and registering and all that kind of stuff. So it's just
Mm-hmm.
that. And then balancing that against, the day job, which is
Sure. Yeah,
which is not
that's
easy.
yeah, no, of course. I remember, before I went full time, I was juggling, my side hustle and my full time, and trying to quite often I spread myself way too thin a couple times. And then,
Fair.
eventually I took the leap, and I know how challenging it can be. And plus demands of family and home and,
Mhm.
all the things too. Um, so the work backwards thing, though, it's funny you mentioned that because I talk about that. I have a social media content strategy course that's going to be launching this spring, for the fourth cohort, I believe. And one of the things I talk about in there when it comes time for the content planning section and, creating calendars and all that stuff, is I do talk about a work backwards method, because
Mhm.
my prior life, I come from the theater world, and we were always working backwards
Yeah.
from performance opening date, from season announcement launch, from all these different things, when we knew, like, okay, before this happens, we need to have this in place. Before this happens, we need to do this.
Right.
Before we take someone's credit card, we need to
Right.
have the description of the show. At least we need to have, maybe a hint of what the show art might look like. We might not have the cast yet, but we can show, maybe some concepts of the set, or, different things like that. So that's really helpful, and has remained helpful for me, in how to approach my business. So I'm uh glad to hear you use that same kind of idea.
Yep.
um
Yep.
So jumping into the product side for a sec,
Yeah. Yeah.
and some of the stuff that you make in your store. Um, how do you find, first of all, how do you find your inspiration for the designs and some of the graphics and stuff that you make on shirts and bags and mugs and all that kind of stuff? Like how do you get inspired?
Yeah. So I am, I consider myself a copycat crafter. And I kind of came up with that phrase last year. I was in a Facebook event called Dupes and Flips. So we all had to pick something from Pinterest or somewhere that we saw that we wanted to kind of duplicate and make our own. And I was
Okay.
like, wait, this is all I do all the time. Like 90% of I think what I create comes from something that I saw that somebody else did that I was like, okay, I want to do that, but I want to put it on a surface that looks like this, and I want these colors, and I'm going to turn it
Mm-hmm.
this way, and I'm going to add these embellishments to it. Every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, I'll get an idea that I feel like just came out of my brain, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was thinking about this as I was sort of thinking about the podcast. I am a crafter, not necessarily a creative, right? Like
Okay.
I take something, it's like somebody can send me a picture and say, hey, can you make this for me? 99.9% of the time, the answer is going to be yes.
Mm-hmm.
It might look a little different. We might talk a little bit about color scheme. We might talk a little bit about a different vision that I have. Um, Somebody hands me a blank surface and says, do something with it. And I'm going to sit there and stare at it for like days before I'm like, what am I going to
Uh-huh.
do with this? And so and I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit there, but that's sort of how I feel about it. So, there are people that I follow. There are Facebook groups that I'm in, obviously Pinterest. Um, you know, I'll see a t-shirt design and be like, oh, I like that, but I want it in a different color, or I want the words in a different font, or, something like that. Or I'll be like, I want this quote on this t-shirt, and I'll, pop that out myself. I am
Mm-hmm.
also, as part of my business, I'm an independent designer for a company called Chalk Couture, which is a DIY home decor company. And so they create silk screen transfers that we use to put on surfaces and t-shirts and things like that. So some of that's sort of pre-made for me. But the trick for me in forcing myself sort of out of my little creative box is to, one of the things I've been doing this year is to start to figure out, well, I want to take this element from this transfer and this element from this transfer and put them together so that
Mm-hmm.
it looks completely different. Or I've been on this kick of making the same project, but in three different ways. So I'll take this frame and I'll use the same transfer in this color scheme, but then I'll take the same frame, the same transfer, completely different color scheme and an embellishment so it looks completely different. Like you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't necessarily, unless you saw them sitting right next to each other, know that it's really essentially the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pushing myself out there in those ways because I know that sometimes I tend to just stay in the little box of
Mm-hmm.
do it the way I saw it done. Like, no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
You got a little more creative juice than that.
Yeah.
But I think that's also why I like custom orders. I like when people come to me. So I have a customer, this will be my third custom order for her. She messaged me and she was like, hey, do you have the ASL transfer? Yep. She's like, great. My daughter is very into ASL right now. Can you do something with her name on it in the ASL? I'm like, yep, absolutely. So I sat down, I looked at what surfaces I had. I sent her a message. I'm like, I was thinking between these two. And she's like,
ASL
well,
meaning American Sign
American
Language.
Sign Language. Yes, I'm
Hmm.
sorry. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Um, and I was like, okay, what kinds of things does she like? She like rainbows, butterflies, I'm like, okay. So I'm starting to get a vision in my head of, what this design is going to look like.
Hmm.
Her. And I like that because there's some constraints for what the customer wants, but then I have a little bit of creative license, especially with Tiffany, because she's like, you go with your vision, I'm like, okay, what colors she like, all that. And then I, kind of take it and come up with something.
It's nice when people kind of give you a bit of free reign too, to
Yeah.
to put your own spin on something because they have the trust with you and they've worked with you before and they know like you're just good at this. Like I can just give you, some of the parameters and just let you go to town.
Yep.
And I think too, like I'm sure I know I relate to it, and I'm sure a lot of you listening can, of that feeling of like what Whitney was saying, like you see something on a shelf at a store or on TV or on someone's Instagram, and you're like, oh my God, like I could totally make that.
Mhm.
And it's funny because if you're looking at this on YouTube, you'll see the thumbnail of this video has Whitney's headshot on it, and she's wearing a shirt that says, "I could totally make that."
Yep.
And I think
Yep.
a lot of us can relate to that feeling, and you're like, oh man, like I can think of a creative way to replicate that in my own way, or to do that even cheaper, or to
Yeah.
do it, in a more an easy way to kind of replicate, that the look of that thing, whether it's
Yeah.
something that you're going to wear, like, fashion or accessory wise, or something just like, in your home, or you're going to give it as a gift or whatever. So I love that. So when it comes time for you talked a bit about like how you get the inspiration for some of
Mhm.
the pieces and some of the stuff. Um, do you have so talk to me about some of the tools or maybe some of
Sure.
the apps or sites or stuff that you use to actually design. Like if someone was out there and maybe they're aspiring to start a business like yours where they're designing products and stuff like that.
Mhm.
What are some ways that they could, start to dip their toe in that water?
Yeah. So let's see. In terms of technology, I use Canva a lot.
Hmm.
Now I use that more for social media content, but you
Hmm.
can use it to create graphics and things like that. Um, there's some other AI tools, and there's one, I want to say it's called Playground. Playground. I cannot believe I can't remember the name of it now because it's the coolest thing. It's completely free for up to like X number of designs a day, and it's an insane amount of designs. And you go in and you type in what you're looking for, and it gives you a whole bunch of designs, and then you can take it and say, okay, I like this one, but I want you to change the color scheme to this. And instead of a llama, I want a unicorn. And I want this text on it, and it'll produce it for you. So
Hmm.
that's very cool. And then there's, I mean, Chat GPT and other AI does the same thing.
Hmm.
I am, let's see, I use So Fontsy a lot for SVGs, PNGs, things like that. I also use Design Bundles and Creative Fabrica a lot for things like that. Um,
Hmm.
I I mostly have subscriptions to those because I use them so much and I pay for the commercial use rights that it saves me money to just pay the subscription than to pay
Hmm.
by design. Um, and then in terms of like the home decor, I make a lot of that is chalk couture. So a lot of that is the transfers and their paste and inks and things like that. That is an interesting way for somebody to dip their toe into something creative. There's several, you know, design companies like that. There's us, I think it's called Magnolia. I want to say Magnolia Home. That's not it because that's Joanna Gaines.
Hmm.
It's Magnolia. I got into them as a customer because I liked the product, and then to be able to sell my finished goods, I became a designer. But that's an interesting way to exercise some creative juices because there's just so much available, so many colors, so many different kinds of transfers and designs.
Hmm.
They actually just recently launched a what they're calling Chalk After Dark line. So it's a little bit of sass and snark and mildly inappropriate humor, which is all on brand for me. So I am eating all of that up. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's kind of fun. And I use those products a lot when I'm live because they're fast. Like I love making t-shirts with heat transfer vinyl, but between the design, the cut, the weed, and the press, 45 minutes from start to finish.
Mm,
I
mm-hmm.
can make a top t-shirt in 15.
Mm-hmm.
5 if I'm only using one color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, so depending on what I want to do, depends on the medium that I use.
Sure.
Um, and then I mean, I have your stain, I use ribbon and yarn and paint, regular paint and all the bling and printables for decoupage and all of that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I pull from all kinds of different places in terms of the materials and the products that I use. I'm still very much a paper crafter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
haven't moved into, much online there,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm trying to learn how to design those kinds of things. So I just actually bought a Procreate course for myself
Okay.
to learn how to use Procreate because I am very interested in learning how to create digital products and designs more than how I already know how to do it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so I'm slowly
That's
dipping
fun.
those orders. Yeah, it is very fun.
Yeah.
And actually, my son wants to learn how to use Procreate for something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
He's writing a story and he wants to use Procreate to illustrate it. And I'm like, all right, well, come over, sit down, we'll do the thing together. Now, mine is all about creating a little Strawberry Fields house, but you'll at least learn how to use Procreate. That's all you're gonna.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome. You're like going to school together.
yeah,
Um,
right.
you know, I use Canva all day
Mhm.
long, every
Yep,
day.
yep,
Canva and ChatGPT are like my boyfriends.
yep.
And you know, I hear from everybody, and I am so guilty of this too. Like, oh my gosh, I wish my Canva could be more organized.
Mm,
And like figuring out how to organize that whole space is an ongoing battle for me, but it brings me to thinking of just how do we organize our digital lives, how do we organize our work, our projects, our everything. Could you talk to us a little bit about kind of getting into the habit or the mindset of some, or maybe setting some good habits that
yeah,
that we can take with us when it comes to digital clutter and stuff like
right,
that.
right. So I think folders,
Hmm.
naming conventions, and then my thing that I am the most guilty of, and sometimes it's just the way it is. So a little bit of a digression, but you'll hear people talk about organizing physical space and that it'll be the only touch it once. That's great in theory. I That's not reality. It's just not. No offense
Hmm.
to people who that is their method of teaching that works for them, but my personal opinion is that sets people up for failure because I don't know anybody whose life is so well managed that they can only touch piece of paper ever once. Sometimes there's tile, on the island. And so on the digital side for me, that's my downloads. I am
Mm.
so trying to break this habit. When I download it, put it where it goes. Name
Oh
it what
yeah.
it's supposed to be named and put it where it goes and then delete it out of my downloads. Um,
Hmm.
so those are probably the three things. Set up a folder structure that works. Very simple, very high level. You do not need folders for every single thing. Don't have a folder for just one thing in it. Same with an actual filing system, right? If you have only one piece of paper in the file folder, put that piece of paper somewhere else.
Hmm.
Same with that, and use standard naming conventions. This
Hmm.
is one I've changed over time, but I want dates in everything because I usually, even if I can't remember what I called it or where I put it, I remember when it was roughly, and so, you want to make it searchable. And so you need
Hmm.
consistent naming conventions. And, I have a workshop coming in mid-March specifically about this, really designated for crafters and creatives on how do we organize our pictures? How do we organize our printables, SVGs, all of that kind of stuff. And this is what we're going to talk about. How do you set up your folders? How do you set up your naming conventions? Because you want to use the same naming conventions across everything. How you name
Mm-hmm.
your photos is how you should name everything else. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, you know, don't have a folder for a budget, or have a folder for a budget, have a folder for taxes, but have it all in a folder that says financial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you can drill down into that. But so those are the things there. But for me, the thing I'm the most guilty of is the downloads. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I'm
I think
like, oh
that's a
my
lot of us.
Lord, how do I have a month and a half worth of things sitting in my download folder? No wonder I can't find it, because it's there.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I struggle with in that too is I have OneDrive on my phone, which means I can access anything except when it's in my downloads on my computer, because that's not in OneDrive. So the other
Mm-hmm.
day I was looking for something and I was like, I know I have it. I know it's there. Well, yeah, it was there. It was in my download, so I can't access it on OneDrive. I'm like, well, that doesn't help me one bit.
Mm-hmm. So many good points in that. Let me break that apart a little bit. So one, um, so first, I am extremely guilty of the downloads downfall, and even though I have the best intentions, and even though I do have naming conventions that I like to use, and I want to talk about that specifically in a second,
Yeah.
um, you know, think about what Whitney's saying here. Like when she's talking about folders and subfolders and naming conventions and stuff, that can apply to not just, for example, your Canva account, and not just, for example, your desktop on your actual computer, but like Dropbox, Google
Mhm.
Drive, like all these different things that we are in and out of all day long. That's
Yep.
how you start to clean them up, and picture it like you're putting things in a big box, or you're putting things in a little box, and then you're putting that little box in a bigger box and in a bigger
Yep.
box.
Yep.
And then you're kind of putting that box to the side, and it's nice and tidy and out of the way, and it's got
Right.
a label on it so you know what's inside it. And it's like, think of how like a store is organized, or how a
Right.
library is organized by topic or subject matter or whatever. And you can kind of start to see how you can, bring order to that, both mentally and, physically. But when you say naming conventions, for maybe people who don't really get what that is, could you give just like a simple example, maybe, of what that could look like?
Yeah. So take pictures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I organize my pictures with the date in the name of the picture. So your
Mm-hmm.
naming convention is, so say all you use is the date with nothing else. Do you go year, month, day, year? That's your naming convention. And that's a very
Mm-hmm.
personal decision. And I've gone back and forth, but you want to be consistent. So if you go year, day, or year, month, day, you want that to be how all of your pictures are named. And if you use a hyphen, don't use a hyphen. Again, that's personal. Some of that's personal choice. Some of it's going to be how well searchable it is. There's some things that don't work in the
Mm-hmm.
file explorer search if you have certain special characters in there. Um,
Mm-hmm. Or like a weird asterisk or a
or a weird
slash, or
asterisk or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
underscores tend to work better than just hyphens, for
Right.
example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so again, when I think about pictures, I think about how I organize them. I organize my pictures the same way I organize my scrapbook paper and supplies. They're all by year, but within that, they're by season or theme.
Mm.
So I have, a folder for fall, winter, summer. And if I'm just organizing them by what month they were, the months go in there. If there was a big event, so we took a trip for my 50th birthday, in that folder, I have 50th birthday. All the pictures from my 50th birthday are in there. It's all about where are you going to go to look for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a little bit of sort of pre-thinking. And sometimes you have to switch it up. So I have this one set of social media content. that I'll be honest, I can't land on where to put it because every time I go to look for it, it's not where I think it should be, which means I moved it to where I thought it should be the last time, and this time I've changed my mind again. So I'm
Hmm.
struggling with that. But those pictures, they're my 50th birthday. That's what I'm going to go look for. Okay, my 50th birthday was in 2023. I go into that folder and there's a folder that says 50th birthday. They're all right there. Um,
Hmm.
and I have a folder for pets in every, in every year. So all of our pictures of our pets go in that folder because that's where I'm gonna find it. That's what I'm looking for. And then there's the whole
Hmm.
thing about tags and all that in photos, which I don't really love, so I don't really use them. But you can use your naming conventions for that if you like all of our old family pictures, my mom's family that I have scanned from my grandmother's photos, I have everybody's name. Like if they're my
Okay.
aunt's family, my Aunt Sandy's family, all of them are named with Sandy in it. Cause then it's like if I'm looking for something, then I can find it there. My mom's all has her name in it, things like that. So um,
Your future self will thank you for that.
my future self will thank me for that. The other thing my future self will thank me for is starting to write on the backs of pictures who's in them and when it was. I learned that
Mm,
all of those pictures of my family that
good
like even
idea.
my mom and her aunt had no idea who these people were. And I'm like, so
Hmm.
even when I scrapbook them, I still write on the back or underneath who's in the picture and when it was. I'm like, somewhere
Yeah.
100 years from now, nobody's going to know who this is. Uh,
That's really awesome. That's a good point. Yeah, we all have, shoe boxes and binders of pictures that, were given to us by our parents or our
yep,
grandparents or whatever. And yeah, taking that time to, all right, let me start to get this organized. Let me start to categorize and name this, so
yep,
that future generations can know
yeah,
what's going on.
yep,
And so that your future self, also
yeah,
for
yeah,
for
exactly.
just general stuff. And I think like when you were saying, okay, put the file where you're gonna look for it in the future makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense because, again, like my background in the theater, we had a giant, server that we all operated off of when we needed PDFs and forms and pictures and files and all these different things. And so ours was organized by season. And
Yeah,
so if we were looking for, okay, the 20 or the 2008, 2009 season, we did, West Side Story or whatever it was. We know that production is in there. And then inside that production folder is all the stuff. So you've got
yeah,
pictures, you've got video, you've got sketches, you've got cast headshots and bios, you've got ticket sales and
yep,
financials and marketing and, all these things inside that. So that makes a lot of sense. And something that I do, so some of my digital files are very organized and some like that's why you're only seeing this part of my office right now because if I were to turn the camera around, you'd be like running and screaming. But my desktop right now is like a nightmare. It's just
yeah,
icon after icon pasted on top of each other because I haven't taken 5 minutes to organize it. So
right.
I'm a mix of, both sides of this. However, something that I have been doing since I opened my business, and I think it's because I carried it over from my time in the theater, is I do have a naming convention system for some of my like more official businessy type
Yes,
things. And
yes,
so in my general, Alicia Yervis creative folder,
right.
for example, I do have a folder called clients. And then inside that clients folder are, the names of my clients, my current clients, I should say. And inside each of those client folders, there's a folder for service agreements where I put all of
Mhm.
our signed contracts. There's a folder for, approved copy, approved photos,
Mhm.
whatever the things are. And then, uh, when I complete a project with my client or, when we wrap or whatever, then I drag their client folder into a folder I have called archive, where basically it's kind of like me putting it away or putting it back
Yep,
on the shelf. And I'm only keeping my live clients and my live projects like within eyesight. And
yeah,
then if they sign on with me again or we do something again in the future, I pull it out of the archive folder and back into the live workspace and so on. And that's been helpful for me because it reduces overwhelm of what's on
Yes.
screen and stuff
Yes.
because I was going to say, like, I feel like physical clutter, digital clutter, both of them can really impact creativity and productivity, at least for me. And I wonder what you would say to that, or what advice you have, in how to kind of keep your mind and brain fresh
Yeah,
when there is clutter. Besides, obviously, like tackling the clutter, which we're going to
sure.
talk about in a minute.
Sure. So yes, I believe those two things wholeheartedly. There are days, and so anytime I do an organizing workshop or course or anything like that, one of the very first things I talk about are things that I believe to be misconceptions about organization. And one of those
Hmm.
things is that organized people are organized all the time. That's not
Mm.
true. We go through
Hmm.
seasons in our life, and those seasons mess up our systems and structures. So, for me, starting a creative business completely changed how I bought things, how I needed to store things, how I needed to be able
Mm.
to find things. And it's taken me, I mean, this will be 3 years this August, and it's really sort of taken me up until probably just the past couple months to really figure out how I need all this set up. So I'm actually part of the reason you have a virtual background on me right now is because I'm in a bit of an overhaul in my physical space. And so
Okay.
while it doesn't actually look that terrible right now, it doesn't look the way it's it is in my head. Got some things I'm moving, some new furniture that's coming and all of those kinds of things.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting. I'm very excited about that. But I will have days where it's been a week, and so the house is kind of a mess of clutter, and my husband will know I have reached my limit because I'm like, nope, dealing with it now. And it only takes me about 30 minutes to get everything back to looking the way it should because I have good systems and structures. But I'm like, I can't take it. It's taking up too much space in my brain. It's sitting on my shoulders and I can feel it. Gotta go.
Hmm.
Gotta be dealt with right now.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there's a school of thought that says we'll just deal with it before it gets to that point. But again, I don't believe that's always realistic for people. And so then it's just a matter of saying, I'm taking this 30 minutes and I'm dealing with it. Now, if you don't
Yeah.
have systems and structures, because that's what organization is, right? Clutter and organization are not the same thing. They go hand in hand, but clutter is a state of being. Organization is a system, right? It's having
Hmm.
system for putting things away. It's having a home for things. It's having a process for getting something done. So like organization can be a process as much as it is a physical system. And so taking that time and investing that time to get there frees up so much of that mental space that then for all of us, but for creatives like me, and this is how I talk about it when I talk to creatives, is that block that you're getting because you can't get the juices going for that project gets cleared up when you tackle some of the other things that are taking up space in your brain, which is oftentimes the physical clutter and the lack of organization. Um,
Hmm.
if you can't get to your desk to create, then you can't create.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, there the connection between those two things is so unbelievably strong. And there's such a heavy psychological component, honestly, to organization of physical space that you have to be able to tap into those things and figure out those things and look at some of the things that are getting in your way and tackle some of those
Hmm.
small, manageable bites, but still tackling some of that. It gets you a long way to being able to get your space the way you want it.
I love what you said about if you can't get to your space to create, then you don't create. That is such a good lesson, good point, good lesson. I think so many of us can relate to that. And, it doesn't matter if you are a crafter, a painter, a sewist, a writer, a content creator, a videographer, a graphic designer, anything that, regarding your workspace, whether that's an art studio or a desk, your workspace, if you can't get there to
Yep.
put on your creative brain and get the juices flowing, then it's not going to happen. And so for those of us out here who do have a workspace, again,
Hmm.
whether that is a small home office, a tiny desk in a corner somewhere, or a big nice studio, whatever it
Right.
is, what would you say would be some getting started tips
Sure.
for crafters, for digital creatives, for anybody who has a workspace to try to get their small spot organized? What should we start with? How do we
Yeah.
prepare?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something that I actually learned years ago, and it's one that I hold to in terms of what you just said, getting started.
Hmm.
There's a concept called an organized only space. And
Okay.
so you pick your one spot, and I always recommend to people that it's your work surface. So if it's a
Okay.
desk, if it's an art table, whatever you're using to create whatever you're creating,
Hmm.
that's your organized only space. And you get that to a place where it's the way you want it. And then you make a commitment to yourself that that's how it stays. Now, that can be a daily cleanup, that can be an every 3 day cleanup. I'm a try to keep my desk cleared off at the end of the day kind of person because I hate coming in
Mm.
the morning and it's a mess. Do I do that every day? No. Do I do it most days? Yeah. Um, and so what I talk to people about is, so for preparation, you need trash bags, a couple of boxes. Um, I usually say masking tape and a Sharpie and
Hmm.
a timer. Um, and maybe somebody to hold you accountable depending on how much you trust yourself to do what you're supposed to do. Um,
Hmm.
I always tell people everything comes off that space. Everything comes off that space and goes in a box or a plastic bin or whatever you need. If it's a desk and it's drawers, your call depends on how messy the drawers are. If the drawers
Okay.
are a hot mess, then I say do the drawers too. If your drawers are like, yeah, the drawers are fine, then you can save those for later. You go through everything that's in that box and nothing goes back on your desk that doesn't belong there.
Hmm.
Now, I often get but what do I do with that stuff? Nope. It stays in that box. You will deal with that stuff later. And this is the whole,
Okay.
sometimes you got to make a mess to clean up a mess.
Right, right.
Right? But nothing goes back on or in the desk except what actually belongs there. If it's something that already has a home, put it away. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. If it's broken, trash it. You know,
Hmm.
you if you want to go so far as to do the keep donate pitch while you're doing this, you can. You keep
Hmm.
pile, go back on the desk, but you're keeping it. Doesn't go back on the desk, you don't want it anymore, you're donating it, and then trash, broken, whatever, just go
Hmm.
ahead. And then you get everything back on your desk, and then you figure out, is this the way I want it? Do I want, so this is this is something that I actually, oh, you probably can't see it because I have my
Oh, I
background.
see it. A mug of paintbrushes and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little thing I made that's got my paintbrushes in it. And that sits on my desk because I got sick of going into my closet to get a paintbrush whenever I needed one. But I have
Hmm.
several desk organizers on my desk for pens, scissors, markers, my ruler, like all of that stuff that I need at an arm's reach or just a very small slide of my chair. Don't have to
Mm.
get up out of my chair for it. I
Hmm.
have a video mount on here. I have a phone mount on here. I have my phone charger on here, my monitors and all of that. But that's all it lives on my desk. Um,
Hmm.
and so you get all that back, you figure out you might need to buy some things. Don't buy things first. Get stuff figured out first, then figure out what you need to buy. It's very
Hmm.
frustrating to buy something and realize it doesn't fit where you want it or doesn't hold the things you wanted it to hold. Like that's
Very true.
very frustrating.
Yeah.
Repurpose stuff if you have it. If you have an old coffee can, that works as a pen and pencil holder, hold a ruler. Like you don't have to go buy things. Um, I often tell crafters like that's the fun. We can take stuff we have and make it pretty, and paint it or decorate it or however you want. Um, and then that's your desk. That's
Mhm.
your workspace. And then you start to build out from there, but your commitment is that this space is going to stay like this so that I am ready to sit down and work when it is time to sit down and work. Um,
Mhm. That's
and then you
awesome.
apply similar principles to other areas. But again, it's all about quick wins because those quick wins give you that motivation and show you, okay, I can do this. That took me 30 minutes,
Mhm.
to be able to do that. Now, sometimes you got to be able to make quick decisions. That's where an accountability buddy can come in, tell him what you're
Yep.
trying to do. If I hem and haw over it, take it out of my hand. Nope, that
Yeah.
goes in the later pile. You have to think about it, it goes in the later pile.
Yep.
Um,
That's
so
great.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like um I saw a quote earlier this week that said um, action creates motivation, which creates more motivation.
yeah,
And I think I had been thinking of it in the other way, where it's like,
right,
okay, once I get motivated, then I
right.
can take action. And it's like, no, you have to lie to yourself and trick yourself to do something
Yes,
first. And then you're so excited because you see what's
right.
happening and you're like, oh my God, like I'm going to keep going. Like I could do another 10 minutes. Like, oh, wow,
Yep.
and that's such a helpful little trick for your brain. And also what
Yep.
you said about, I hate coming out to work when my desk is not ready. It's all cluttered. It's
Yeah.
messy. It pisses me off. I'm not feeling, creative
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like when it's the same kind of thing when you like don't do the dishes before bed and you
Right.
wake up and the dishes are still in the sink and it's like ugh. And then it's just
Yep.
another thing on your plate. So if you can think of it as yeah, like how for those of you who watch The Bear, how they clean the kitchen like hell so that it's
Yeah.
prepped and ready for the morning staff. That same kind of idea. And also I love the idea too about like kind of giving yourself these boundaries or these like non-negotiables
Mhm.
for your
Absolutely.
workspace of like I am protecting this sacred space, like this is how this has to be when I am sitting and working at it. Sure, things can happen, I'm using stuff,
Yeah.
I got all my supplies, la la la, but at the
Right.
end of the day I pack it up, I get things back to where they are so that I'm starting with a fresh surface. And I love that because it's like cluttered space, cluttered mind. So if you're coming in the morning with your water and your coffee and it's just a nice clean surface and you're like, okay, like, huh, I could breathe,
Yep.
I'm ready to go.
Yep.
So I love that advice. And I know that you were kind enough to share a decluttering guide as well, a craft supply decluttering guide, which folks can grab from girlfridaycrafts.com/declutter. And I'm going to put it in the show notes as well. But could you tell us a little bit about that guide? I know it's geared towards crafters, but tell us a little bit about what's inside that guide.
Sure. So I think it's just one page. I tried to make sure and get it down to one page.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it kind of breaks your space up kind of by area. So your desk, your lighting, your supplies, things like that. And it's just a little checklist of, getting rid of, trash, getting rid of things that are broken, making
Mm-hmm.
sure that you have proper lighting, making sure that you have a good chair, you know,
Mm.
do, are the things that are within reach. um and
Mm-hmm.
the it gets into supplies like about seasonal, getting rid of, packing up off season things and putting them in another space, things like that. I think it could be relatively applicable to an office even if you're not a crafter or creative. I think
Mm-hmm.
somebody could take a look at it and say, well, it's not this for me, but it's this.
Right,
um
right.
there's some pretty The concepts and ideas of organization are applicable across everybody. They're not the things that
Mm-hmm.
I talk about, and I am a professional organizer, and so that goes beyond, just the creative space. If you
Mm-hmm.
replace paintbrushes with ink pens or markers or, you know, whatever drafting
Sure.
supplies or anything like that. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that that guide can easily be extrapolated into whatever anybody else might need and in any room of the house. It's
Mm-hmm.
going through and thinking through by sort of area. Do I need this? Does this work for me? What are the things that I need to think about to make this space better? Um,
Mm-hmm.
essentially,
Awesome.
yeah. And
That'll be really, really helpful.
you referenced earlier in the interview, you referenced my future self thanking me, and that's what the organized only space is. And I
Mm.
think that's something to think about. There's a book called, I always get the title wrong. I don't remember if it's How to Clean House or How to Keep House While Drowning. And
Oh, I know the exact one you're talking
yeah,
about.
I
Hmm.
love that book so much. And she is ADHD as well. And so she has really good information in there for individuals who are neurodivergent. But she talks a lot about doing things that are going to be kind to your future self. And
Hmm.
so, you know, she talks about what her nighttime routine is and setting that up as my nighttime routine is not only designed to help me get ready for bed and make that transition, but it's set up to be kind to my morning self. So she
Hmm.
talks about
Hmm.
programming her coffee maker and you know all that kind of thing. The desk thing for me is that it's
Yeah.
no, I don't want to do it right now, but tomorrow I will thank myself for having done it
Hmm.
because then I have to deal with it in the morning.
Hmm.
So I think that's yeah, very much
And
that
that was the name of that book is How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis.
Casey Davis.
And Casey Davis has a site called strugglecare.com, which has so many resources and awesome advice for those of us with ADHD or those of us who just need help like getting organized and being nicer to ourselves and cutting ourselves some friggin' slack while we're trying to do all the things. She's
Yeah.
very good at that, so I highly recommend her.
Yeah.
So, but also, just you giving us that short, walkthrough demonstration of how to tackle, a small workspace and the beginnings of getting that organized was so helpful. I know for me, like I'm gonna literally, when I'm done editing and posting this episode, I'm gonna listen back to that section specifically and tackle this behemoth that's in front of me right now that's not on camera, but trust me, it's there. And I have been thinking, like, how do I even start this? What do I
Yeah.
do? Because I do use a lot of this stuff, but a lot of this stuff is just sitting here because I didn't put it in the place where it's supposed to live.
Right.
So
Right.
I love, love, love that you've given me the guidance and pathway of like, this is how to do it in these steps. And there we go. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Um, so you mentioned too that you have a workshop coming up in March. So
Yes.
tell us a bit more about
Yes.
that workshop.
Yeah. So I it is called Digital Clarity. Um, oh, there's a tagline for it now. I don't remember, but it's
It's okay.
designed to organize your digital files. So we're going to
Hmm.
go through some of what we talked about earlier. I'm going to walk people through how to think about folder structure.
Hmm.
You know, keeping it fairly high level, kind of some guidelines around, you know, you want maybe no more than X number of folders, like right at you um, and at the top level, and then what subfolders look like within that, and how to kind of set that up and think through that. And then we'll talk about naming conventions and you know how to make decisions around naming conventions, how to actually rename files because I know sometimes that freaks people out. Um,
Hmm.
and then how to you know think through those kinds of things and really kind of apply that across all of your digital files so that there's consistency there and you know when you're looking for it you're going to find it because it doesn't matter where it is, you've named everything kind of in the same structure. And then really how to categorize because you talked about it in your theater days, you know, how you guys set up your folders. And so everybody knew if you
Hmm.
were looking for something, this is how you go to look for it. And so that's something people have to figure out for themselves. My way isn't going to be the way for everybody, but
Sure.
that you have to think about that. There's some prep and planning that comes for people who don't do a lot of digital work, it may not be that big of a deal, but
Hmm.
I have principles. I have SVGs, which are cutting files for a cutting machine. I have PNG files, which are photo files that I use to create with. I have photos going all the way back, like 5 generations of my family. Um, then I have all my business files. So my business professional development and my business finances versus my personal finances. And, so trying to think about how I need this structured, where, and for helping people figure out how they need it structured to be able to
Hmm.
create the folders, create the subfolders, then create the naming conventions. There's an element of eliminating duplicates. And then there's an element of maintenance, like we talked about, like the downloads, right? So for
Yeah.
me, it's trying to make sure, like once a week, it's usually on Sundays, I sit down, I open the downloads folder, anything that's there that I know I've already saved where it's supposed to be, I delete, put it where it's supposed to go. Again, trying to get better about doing it as I'm downloading, but that's not always completely realistic. If I'm kind of going on the fly and it's like, oh, I need to grab this now or I'll forget, download it,
Hmm.
and then I'll put it where it belongs. But then I have to do the later, I'll put it where it belongs.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's going to be
Yeah,
about a
so
60-minute workshop, I think,
okay.
with a little bit of Q&A. Trying to decide, I might do some Zoom follow-up Q&A after. I like to offer that so that people are
Hmm.
implementing and then they get stuck. Like there's a way to do a little bit of follow-up for people to ask questions and troubleshoot, or, okay, am I overthinking this? Or, how would you structure this? I like to provide that extra level of support. Probably be a little workbook because I like workbooks, but
Who
yeah,
doesn't?
right, right.
Yeah. All right, good. Awesome. Well, everyone needs to go follow Whitney at on Instagram at Girl Friday Crafts. You could also find her on Facebook. You can also find her on YouTube with that same handle, or you could go to girlfridaycrafts.com. You can look her up on Pinterest. There's a link to her Pinterest page in the show notes, as well as her Etsy page, girlfridaycrafts.etsy.com. We also put a link to the declutter guide that she was kind enough to share with us. That's going to be in the show notes as well. But if you follow her on social, she can get you all the info on that upcoming workshop that's going to be next month, March 2025.
Yep.
And that's going to be so, so helpful to so many of us out here. So thank you so much for that and good luck with it.
Thank you.
And Whitney, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I cannot thank you enough for that desk cluttering exercise. I think everyone listening, if the overwhelm is just too much, let's just stop for a second. Let's commit to just clearing up our little workspace. Let's start there.
Absolutely.
I think we
Absolutely.
can all do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to hear about it. So, Alicia, if you do that, I want you to email me later and send me a picture. Tell me, oh my God, this feels great. Yeah, because it's amazing how much just a little bit can just make you feel so much better. Make you feel like
Hmm.
things are a little more under control.
And did you see what Whitney just did there? She snuck in some accountability there. She was like, you better send me a picture.
That's right. That's right.
Now, so now I have to do it. Oh my God.
Yeah,
No, but
absolutely.
I definitely want to do it. So yes, I will absolutely do that. Thank you again so much. This was a really fun chat. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was
Oh,
great
thank
chatting
you
with you
for
today.
asking. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
All right, awesome. I'll talk with you soon, my friend. Thank you again so much.
Sounds good.
And happy decluttering, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye bye.